Hey, fellow Ristopians. I've got, can I say posting diarrhea? Yeah, I thought something popped up recently. I talk about, so the video's probably going to be titled Dimensions versus Proportions. And I think that there's often a lot of confusion about those two terms. So, I was watching a video that I've just uploaded, and it became apparent to me that these two watches that I've done a few videos on kind of show the difference between proportions. Let's try and give you a close up with no glare. Proportions versus dimensions. So the Erebus is, I believe, 39 20mm lug width, and the San Martin is 42mm 21mm lug width. So it's got a bigger lug width. But so those figures that I've just quoted are dimensions. They're, they're a fact. They are the dimensions of the watch. Proportion is those dimensions in relation to each other. And I think I've seen a lot of posts where people get confused with those two things. Now, proportionally, the Ascent is kind of perfect. I mean, for me, I think that case size and lug width go really well together. And that's the that's the proportions that the San Martin should have, but it doesn't. The case is too big for the lug width, and I'm just talking about those two things currently. And it has these bigger shoulders, and it just looks, the bracelet looks a bit weedy in comparison to the huge, as you may or may not know, I've ordered the 3920 on the San Martin today, which I look forward to seeing, because it's going to be a better proportioned watch. Well, it's going to be a better size for me. Will it be better proportioned than the Erebus? Who knows? Hopefully, but the Erebus is a bit too small. But am I making sense? But yeah, I mean, it just, that's one of the things I like about the Erebus, that it's very, very well proportioned. Not a lot of watches are, especially when you're in the microbrand world, where when cases get bigger than 39, but they stick to the 20mm lug width, and then they basically look like that. They basically have a big case that's too big for the lug width, and then you get all sorts of problems with taper. I think, as I say, I think that lug width is great for that watch. I don't think you could squeeze 21 in there. You could make the lugs could come out more, but don't mess with it. I think this is great. I think the width, the taper's fantastic. The bracelet's fantastic. The clasp size goes with the size of the watch. I think the whole thing needs beefing up a bit, but that's my opinion for my wrist size. And this is just wrong. This just doesn't work. It's just way too big for a sports dress watch. And unless you've got a huge wrist, but even if you've got a huge wrist, I'll pop them both on. I've got a 7.5 inch wrist. Even if you've got a huge wrist, it's still too big. This should be 22. I think the Grand Seiko that I have is actually 22. So it proportionally looks better than this, but it's still too big for my wrist for a dressier watch. Yeah, it's so I don't. It'd be interesting to see if the 3920 is as well proportioned as the Erebus Ascent. If it is, I mean, I do really like the Erebus Ascent bracelet. It's very much like a Rolex Oyster. It really, really is. It really does look and feel very similar. I think the bracelet is almost, that part of the bracelet, not the clasp, but that part of the bracelet is almost the best thing about the watch. It it outshines the actual watch, and I think the watch head is a really nice watch head. But yeah, will the 3920 in the Saint Martin, will it be as nice as this? Because if it is proportionally, then the Saint Martin will be better. But that might be the deciding factor for me, how it feels. I mean, obviously, you've got a different, a proprietary oyster bracelet, oyster style bracelet on the Saint Martin, which I love. Don't get me wrong, I do love it. But it's not, yeah, it looks great. I prefer the look, and well, I prefer that they have done something different with the look. But yeah, it's going to be difficult to beat this. This has got to be the best micro brand bracelet I've ever felt. I mean, it really is very special. But yeah, proportionally, this is its own thing design-wise. This is, a melee of a few different brands. Seiko, Saab, and Rolex, obviously, with the Oyster Star bracelet. And what else did they say it was similar to? Was it an Omega? I don't know. But this is its own thing. But yeah, we look forward to see. But hopefully that's explained the difference between dimensions and proportions. They're two completely different things. And I mix it. I'll say dimensions when I mean proportions. Then I have to correct myself. But this is a lovely proportion watch. Not many watches are actually very well proportioned these days. I think the Explorer 40 is, even though it's 38.5mm. I think it could do with being a little bit bigger on the case, but it works well. It works well from the lugs. They're not too, these lugs are just too wide. This is like a maxi case, a Rolex maxi case. They're just too wide. Those shoulders are just too big. It needs a 22mm in there to thin those out a bit so they look the same as the Erebus. And then I think it would be lovely. It'd still be too big for me. I'm guessing when I get the... See, this is the funny thing. Although I'm saying this is... it's 39. 39mm is a bit too small for me. I kind of need it to be 40. 40, 21, tapering to 18, I think is perfect for me. It's the Don size, not the Goldilocks size, the Don size. But yeah, people just want smaller and smaller watches these days, or at least people commenting on YouTube do. Whether they're buying them or not, I don't know. People don't really seem to care much about lugs, whether it be the width, lug width, the lug thickness, the lug length. It's just like, it just gets ignored. It's a very odd thing when it's so important to the design of the watch. But yeah, so we will wait and see. In 5 days to a week, the smaller one of this will come in, and I'm really looking forward to comparing it to the Erebus, because I think these are the best two under £500, well under £500. I can't remember how much this one was actually. But the Saint Martin's a bit cheaper, I think, and I think it will be the better option. One last thing I will say about these two is the crowns let them both down. The kind of ridges on this one just look too fine. They look too cheap. The Erebus sticks out too much. The kind of ridges are better, but I think the Erebus one looks, I don't know, they both look a bit cheap. I think really on a screw-in crown watch, they need to recess into the case, as I think they both do a little bit. But it's like they don't recess, and they should recess more or not be as sticky outy. There's a Seiko, that cheapy Seiko, that has the crown at 4 o'clock, and that's like almost invisible. It needs to be somewhere between this and that on that Seiko. And the crown just needs to look, it's such a letdown because everything else looks, decent quality, but the crown just looks cheap to me. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Let me know in the comments below, is it just me that thinks the crowns look cheap? I'm guessing people that bought the watch are not going to admit that. They're going to say no, it looks just great. But yeah, that's the only critique of both of these really, other than the proportions of the Saint Martin. But lovely watches for the money. But yeah, watch this space.